Welcome back to the Junkie Sports Podcast. Today, we're going to go ahead and hop right into it with some of our takeaways from the NBA bubble restart. So, Davis, why don't you go ahead and kick it off for us?
Yeah, so for me, seeing the bubble for the first time, it's evident to me that the NBA is the greatest league in all of sports currently, and that's a large part due to the direction of Adam Silver with his clear vision, direction, and able to make calculated decisions whenever the time comes. And you can also see this reflected in how happy the players seem to be with him. They've been using the anonymous tip hotline not as much and have just been talking and having direct dialogue with him per some sources within the bubble, and how the NBA has approached, allowing the different players to express themselves creatively on the court. I just think the execution with zero coronavirus cases, how they've been able to get now into the playoffs successfully. This is just a textbook example for other leagues to emulate, so that sports will return one day, and Adam Silver is a huge part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. NBA has done a great job of putting the restart on. I mean, we've seen the bubble. There's been zero confirmed cases the last two tests, and even the first test, and those were the most recent of the three tests. In the first test, there was only like three. So, yeah, the NBA has really done a great job with the bubble.
Yeah, absolutely. One takeaway I want to talk about from the NBA bubble, and I know a lot of people are going to attribute this a lot to the team success, but I got to attribute it to one man, and that's Devin Booker. I think the Phoenix Suns played absolutely incredible throughout the bubble. Devin Booker was playing phenomenal. I think if Damian Lillard didn't put up the points and stat lines that he did, I think Devin Booker would have won bubble MVP. Which, by the way, I think those bubble awards were a really cool thing that the NBA did. I just thought that was really
Agreed.
exciting to see players that normally wouldn't make those teams get on there. I thought that was really cool.
Mm,
But for me, a lot of people are saying the Suns are a great young team and they're going to be a great team for years to come. I disagree. I think they're not a good team. I think they just got hot at the right time, with an exception of Devin Booker. I think Devin Booker is an elite player in this league. I think he's going to become a superstar. He's an incredible scorer. But I think the Suns just got really hot. I mean, they started off hot at the beginning of this year, and then they played like crap all season. There's a reason why they went 8-0 and still couldn't make the playoffs. So I don't know. I'd like to hear what you guys have to say about that and how you guys feel about the Phoenix Suns. Like, I understand they played well, but to me, it was just a matter of maybe some teams weren't taking these bubble games as seriously because the home court advantage didn't matter. And then at the same time, I just think they just were playing good basketball. But overall, I just don't think they're a very good team, step aside from Devin Booker.
no, I'd have to agree with you on that point. I think they did get hot at the right time. I mean, to be in the NBA, every player has to be an elite basketball player. So every team has the potential to go off at the right time, and the Suns got extremely lucky and went off at the perfect time. So obviously Devin Booker has the potential to be a superstar in this league, but I think for him to do that, he's going to have to leave the Suns. As Draymond Green said it best, he's got to go
You got to get that man off his roster.
for sure.
Davis, do you have any opinion on this?
Yeah, I guess for me, I was trying to find a quote online, but I was struggling to find it. I was reading through Twitter yesterday, and I saw that Damian Lillard had was trying to open dialogue with Devin Booker, and he said, you can have the bubble MVP. I just needed that playoff spot, and he was a man on a mission, and I agree with you. I think the Suns also got hot in the right time. And this is kind of just the perfect environment that Devin Booker needed to kind of showcase to the world that, he's ready to take that next big step. But at the same time, with the healthy Warriors coming back and, hopefully teams like the Suns and Spurs are also, working on, trying to take the next step and being able to fight for that, last spot or two. The West isn't getting any easier. And so I don't think that this is automatically going to qualify the Suns to be a perennial team here in the West. Although, I mean, there were some very promising developments, and for me, I think the defensive ability of Mikal Bridges was put on tenfold. And he, going up against all the best wings in the league here in the bubble, he's really been able to showcase that, he's the real deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you touched on a really nice point there, Davis, in that the West is going to be incredible next year. I mean, there are going to be teams that don't make the playoffs that you legitimately could argue would be a top 4 seed in the East. And I'm not kidding. You're going to
– I forget about the Warriors a lot.
Yeah, I mean, people forget about the Warriors. They're going to be in the playoffs. So that means out of all the teams in the playoffs right now, one of them aren't going to make it. And I would say, I think you could argue all 8 teams in the West would be a 4 seed in the East. I really think you could. I mean, the Jazz are going to be back healthier next year. And then don't forget, you have all those other teams that were vying for that ace spot. Like the Memphis Grizzlies are only going to get better. The New Orleans Pelicans only going to get better. The San Antonio Spurs. I mean, that was the first time they didn't make the playoffs in what? It was like 30 years or something. It was something ridiculous. 20 years, something like that. I think the West is going to be really interesting next year. Actually, one thing I had hoped for this year in the bubble was I was kind of hoping they would get rid of the conferences and just do the 16 best teams, because I've never been a fan of the Eastern Conference versus the West, because the Eastern Conference is easier. And I'd much prefer to see the 16 best teams in the playoffs. I just think that'd be more exciting and more fun to watch. However, that didn't happen this year. So I think it'll be really interesting next year in the West, just to kind of see how the team that doesn't make it into the playoffs, but is still like an incredible team. So.
Yeah, I think that'd be really cool, actually, if it was just the top 16. But yeah, I don't know how likely it would be, but I would like to see that eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. Davis, why don't you go ahead and give us another one of your takes?
All right. So I suppose my next take, I'll just get into it. I think that the Rockets small ball is going to frustrate a lot of teams in the playoffs, and they're going to make a deep run here. And I know that kind of goes into a prediction type of thing, but I think, as you could see, the Warriors are just, agents of chaos in some level. And although they didn't have, a dominant bubble by any means, definitely whenever their shooters are on in the corners and they're able to get good ball movement and get some offensive boards, they're going to put up more points than any other team. And they're just kind of a matchup nightmare for a lot of teams, just as it comes down to their pure shooting ability. And so I'm looking forward to seeing kind of what they can continue to build upon once Russell Westbrook gets healthy and back into the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that the Rockets have the potential to go on a deep playoff run. I mean, it really just depends on who they play in the second round, I think. Because I on paper, the Rockets should not have a problem with the Thunder, even without Russell Westbrook. But we all know how streaky the Rockets are, so they could, they've been playing well, but their defense may fall apart here in the playoffs, and we know James Harden hasn't had a good history in the playoffs. So, yeah, I'm really hoping that they make it past the Thunder, so then we can really see what they can do this year.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, Davis. I think the small ball lineup and mentality and their schemes, I think, absolutely worked for the Houston Rockets. I think PJ Tucker is absolutely crucial to that team to be able to run this type of offense, in that he can guard those fives as an undersized player, at playing him at the 5. And so I think the Rockets are definitely poised to be able to make a deep run, but to me, it comes down to James Harden. Even when Russell Westbrook comes back healthy, I have no questions about Westbrook. I just he's such a competitive and tenacious player. I have no issues when he comes back to the lineup, and I think also this small ball lineup really opens the floor for him. And as you have seen, I mean, he's been putting up incredible numbers, which is why he's going to be an All-NBA player this year, just because he's able to get to the basket so much easier when you remove that 5 from the middle of the paint. But James Harden has had his playoff struggles. I mean, he's put up solid numbers, but in crucial games, he'll come up short. And so that's one thing I'm interested to see is, can James Harden get over that hump? I'd love to see it. I love watching James Harden play. He's one of the most gifted offensive players ever. However, I do have concerns with, can he do it? But I'd love to see if they can. Absolutely.
For me, I think the key to the Rockets making a deep run is they need some of their role players to get hot. And I'm not talking about PJ Tucker, Eric Gordon, those usual suspects. I'm talking about Daniel House, even a Jeff Green or a Rocco. Robert Covington's been electric on both sides of the ball and has been, a defensive juggernaut as he always has been. But, obtaining Jeff Green from the Jazz earlier this season, he's been playing pretty well. And I think a lot of people forgot that he even got traded right before the trade deadline and everything got shut down. And it was real pleasant, I think, seeing him integrated into that offense. And I think he really bolsters, that same mentality that they all have. And, I just think it takes one of those guys to get real streaky and real hot, and they're gonna be scary for sure for a lot of teams.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Ben, why don't you go ahead and give us one of your takeaways from the bubble?
All right. Well, I feel like this is probably the most obvious one out there, but the Portland Trailblazers, with the addition of Nurkic and Zach Collins, and then just Damian Lillard going absolutely off in the bubble. I mean, obviously he was fully deserving of the bubble MVP. You couldn't make an argument for Devin Booker, but I understand. I'd vote Dame with multiple 50-point games, 60-point games. I don't even remember how many points he scored in like his three games, but it was over 150. So I would be very, very scared to play Portland at this point. I would be afraid if I was the Lakers, especially because of their bubble struggles and with the level of dominance that the Trailblazers have been playing at. I would be afraid if I were the Lakers right now.
Yeah, for me, there's a lot of role players around Damian Lillard and CJ that can, on any given night, give you you can expect one of those guys to give you a monster night, whether it's Nurkic or, Carmelo Anthony, Gary Trent.
Mm-hmm.
They've had a lot of real good emergences in their role players as well. And I think that's only going to continue here in the playoffs. And so they've been a real exciting team to see back to full strength because obviously they're struggling with a lot of their injuries throughout the season. But, a primetime Damian Lillard and the Blazers are a scary, scary team, and was one of the key reasons why I was pretty hot on them back on our very first episode here in the podcast.
Yep.
So I have a question to pose to you guys, and it's kind of been circling around social media after Damian Lillard's outburst throughout these bubble games is, where would you guys right now have Damian Lillard ranked amongst point guards in the NBA?
Okay, is this including injured?
Yeah, so like Steph's injured, include Steph.
Okay. Oh, I'd have to go. I'd say second or third best because Steph is the best. I'd say him and Kyrie could go one or two.
Kyrie?
That's a hot take there, Ben. I'm not gonna lie.
Who else? Who else?
I don't think Kyrie Irving is. I don't want to say anywhere near, but I think there's definitely separation between Kyrie Irving and Damian Lillard on the basketball court.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, then I go Dame at 2.
Okay. Davis?
For me, I know this is maybe a little bit of recency bias, just with, not having seen Steph in almost a full season. And so you can't discount a healthy Steph Curry, but, we don't know what he's going to look like right after the injury. And so right now at this moment, if I were to have one player on my team going into the playoffs, it's Damian Lillard, and it's not even close. He's been absolutely electric, and he's one of the few guys in the league that's able to pop off for 40, 50, 60 points on any given night and will his team to a victory. And, other point guards, even like Steph, have always benefited from having, bolstered lineups around them. And for me right now, I don't think there's any point guard better than Damian Lillard.
So I think Damian Lillard's second, but it's awfully close for me. I think Damian Lillard does some things better than Steph Curry. I think
Yeah,
Damian
for
Lillard
sure.
because of his stronger frame than Steph, and he's also way more athletic. I think that helps add to his game, especially when watching some of their last couple of games in the bubble. Of the opposing team's defenses were running the box and one, like the Raptors did to Steph in the finals, and just said, we are going to double you every single time you cross half court. And I think in their last game, he had an off shooting day, and I think he still had like 30-something points. I mean, I'm pretty sure he still led his team in scoring, which is pretty incredible when you're getting doubled every time you cross half court. And but for me, I mean, I can't discount what Steph Curry does to a defense. I mean, like Steph Curry, you literally have, whether or not you're double teaming him or not, you have to guard him the second he crosses half court. I'm not saying Damian Lillard doesn't have a lethal shooting range, but I mean, just what Steph does offensively, I mean, it's incredible to see. I mean, the dude just cannot miss.
What
But
about
I
in the
think
clutch
I
time?
think what
Who,
Damian Lillard
who,
does
who
clutch wise is also, I mean, I think it's a little bit better than Steph, but I mean, it's close. It's awfully close. I think it'll be exciting to see how that plays out next year with how their teams do throughout the season. But for me, it's Steph one, Damian Lillard a very, very close second.
So, kind of along those lines, if we're talking about Damian Lillard next season, I'm just curious if you think, if they are to lose in the first round against the Lakers, how do you think the Trailblazers organization approaches next season? Is it time to try to move CJ and find a talented wing to pair with Damian Lillard? Because I mean, right now they need some defensive help, and I don't think they're going to be in real championship contention until they get a more robust defense. And they haven't had a run into the NBA Finals, and having arguably, as we've been discussing, the best point guard in the league, and some really good players around him. How do you think they approach this offseason?
I think they trade CJ and go after a defensive minded wing, kind of as you said, because I think the emergence of Gary Trent Jr. in these bubble, he's an elite shooter, and I think he can kind of step up and fill that role as the shooting guard alongside Damian Lillard. I think that'd be an incredible offense to see. And I don't think it would take I mean, even though CJ's a very solid player, I don't think that the absence of him and putting Gary Trent Jr. in his spot would affect their offense as much as getting an elite defensive wing. I just don't know who they'd be able. I don't know. I can't think off the top of my head who they'd go after. I don't know what kind of team would be looking for a CJ and have that wing that would fit well with the Portland Trailblazers.
Do you think maybe they could buy Gordon Hayward away from the Celtics?
I just don't know why the Celtics would make that trade, just because what the Celtics need is a center. I think they just need a very elite defensive center. I think that's what they lack the most. Daniel Tice is a solid center, but they need. I mean, obviously they're never going to get him, but like a Rudy Gobert, like that, a Hassan Whiteside, that sort of defensive player, I think would fit really well with the Boston Celtics, because they need someone that can step up and defend against Giannis Antetokounmpo. So, I don't know what the Celtics would make that trade. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, I mean, Gordon Hayward is set to be a free agent this offseason. However, he does have that player option, so
Which I'm sure he would take. It would surprise me if he didn't.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
But all right, well, let's go ahead and take our first break.
It's 2020. I'm sure you've thought about making a podcast before. So how do you do it? Well, let me tell you, the easiest way is to use Anchor. That's how we've done it here at Junkie Sports Media. It's real simple. Just download Anchor and you'll be able to record your episodes. They have a big library of sounds that you can use, and they'll take care of the monetization and distribution for you. So just go ahead and download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
All right, welcome back. So we're going to go ahead and bring up each of our favorite players from the NBA bubble. And so, Davis, why don't you go ahead and tell us who your favorite player was?
All right. For me, it's a player that was playing with a lot of heart each game in the bubble, and that's Karis LeVert. The Nets don't get a bunch of recognition, but he came out with a mission, and a lot of analysts were discounting the Nets when a lot of the players opted not to come into the bubble. But Karis LeVert has been putting on a clinic, and so for that reason, he's been my favorite.
Yeah, he's been going off. I would have to say T.J. Warren. T.J. Warren, he's been a real man on a mission. I mean,
T.J. Jordan.
Yeah, T.J. Jordan. Best players in the league. Number 3, Michael Jordan. Number 2, Bull in the practice game. And number 1, Bubble, T.J.
Warren.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, dude, I really hadn't heard of him until he had that beef with Jimmy Butler. So, like, nothing basketball related, and then he comes in and drops 50 points, and it was the first game or something like that. One of the first games.
Yeah, he was going off.
Yeah, it's just on an absolute tear, and almost like a Cinderella story. You hear he was traded for cash considerations from the Suns. So yeah, I'd have to say he's my favorite bubble player.
Yeah, so T.J. Warren definitely had an elite 8 games in the bubble. But my most favorite player in the bubble, and it's a little bit of my personal bias, but he also played incredibly well. And it's just because I have been holding true for a while that he'll be the best player when it all comes to an end from his draft class. And that's Michael Porter Jr. Got second team All-NBA.
Mm-hmm.
Loved watching the fact that they were finally giving him minutes with Will Barton, and I can't remember the other player off the top of my head, but they had 2 players injured that were in their starting lineup. And so they plugged Michael Porter Jr. in there, and they have announced that he's officially going to be their starting small forward going into the playoffs, which I love to see. I love seeing the chemistry between him and Nikola Jokic. It's just really good to see him finally be able to play some competitive NBA basketball and showcase his skill set as like a unique 6'10" wing. He reminds me of a Kevin Durant-esque. I mean, not really. He's not as lethal of a shooter as Kevin Durant, but I mean, he's a 6'10" wing that can absolutely light it up from 3. I love watching him play. I'm super happy that he got the second team All-NBA. So second team all bubble, I guess.
For me, I really like MPJ, but I just don't see him, surpassing what Luka or Trae Young or some of those other guys in the draft class are able to do. But I do really like the comparison to Kevin Durant, just in terms of their play style, the lengthiness and, they're slow, methodical, but, have that quick jab and can get some easy separation, find their shot, and nobody can guard them because of their length on the release. So, just in terms of the craftiness and the length, I guess, and just the gracefulness on the court, I think the comparison is pretty accurate.
Yeah, I agree.
So to wrap up our episode today, we're going to go ahead and talk about a little bit of NBA news. So the first, we're going to talk about 2 coaches who both recently just got fired. So the first one we're going to talk about is Jim Boylen from the Chicago Bulls. So what are you guys' thoughts on that?
Thank God he was not a good coach. The Bulls, I mean, I really think he ran the Bulls players like into the ground, the whole organization. You can see the lack of chemistry he had with the players in some clips, like after a game winner or something like that. We saw
especially with Zach LaVine.
Yeah, Zach. He tried pulling Zach LaVine after he had 45 points, then hit the game winner. I mean, yeah, he wasn't good for the Bulls. I think Kobe White and Zach LaVine and Lauri Markkanen are gonna be very happy that Jim Boylen is gone.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a move that's been months in the making. Ever since basketball got shut down, the Bulls have been cleaning house in their general manager suite and their just their leadership overall. And so this is kind of the last piece to fall with the Jim Boylen firing, and it's very welcoming news because I think with the right coaching they can be a scrappy young team on a mission, kind of like with the Kings last year, the Grizzlies this season. And I think they do have that potential, even though they haven't really shown it. And so I think this is welcoming news for the Chicago Bulls and their organization. It'll be interesting to see who they go with.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, you guys essentially summed it up, so I'm not going to really go into too much detail, but I just think those players would be really excited, and I think it shows that at the end of the day, I think the Bulls are really keen on trying to keep Zach LaVine on. Zach LaVine is a very solid player, and he's just been stuck in a really crappy organization underneath a really, really bad coach. And so I hope they hire someone that can really help develop and showcase his talents and help try and get the Bulls somewhat near a playoff picture at some point. So
Yeah.
it'll be we're looking forward to that. So and then the other coach that also got fired. Personally, I'm very excited about that, and I have a few feelings on this. But I'll let you guys kick it off with Alvin Gentry getting dismissed as the head coach of the New Orleans Pelicans following their absolutely abysmal play in the bubble restart. I mean, there was a couple games where they just got absolutely blown out. And so, what are you guys' thoughts on that?
I personally don't have much of an opinion. I mean, I wasn't the biggest Pelicans fan. I'm I'm a Zion fan, but I'm not like a huge Pelicans fan, I guess. So I guess I'm just more curious as to whether he got fired because of their play in the bubble or if this was a planned move. Because if it was a planned move, I don't really see that because I think some of their play style worked in the later part of the regular season, like the regular season. So yeah, I'm interested to hear more of what the reason who they hire next at least.
Yeah, for me, I was a little surprised at it at first, but then when I thought about it a little more, I think it made sense. Alvin Gentry isn't one of the staple brightest minds in the league by any means, and he was a product of the Phoenix Suns coaching staff under Mike D'Antoni back in the day, and so back in 2015 when they got Alvin Gentry, I think it was a bit of an experiment, and they were hoping they could get a little of that special magic that Mike D'Antoni has cultivated in most organizations that he's been a part of. But yeah, when I thought about it a little more, it's not that hard to see that the Pelicans are, as an organization, after they acquired Zion and acquired a lot of these young pieces, they just need the right coaching in place to kind of guide them for the next 5-6 years. And I don't think Alvin Gentry's that guy. And so I think it's smart for them to be looking for a guy that will hopefully lead their young core to to be able to grow for the next 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah, so I think the New Orleans Pelicans, as I kind of said, just like they looked absolutely terrible in the bubble. It honestly came across as they did not want to win. I think that's partly on the players. I think that's partly on the medical staff, as I think they definitely had a factor in limiting Zion's ability to play. But I think at the end of the day, it all lands on Alvin Gentry's shoulders. I mean, he's the head coach, and I think he just didn't put his players in the best position to win some of these games. He wasn't able to at least keep his team wanting to fight. I mean, that when I watched that Clippers game, when they gave up like 80 in the first half, and like the Clippers tied their franchise record for most threes. I mean, they literally stopped playing defense and offense. It was one of the worst NBA basketball games I have ever seen from a team. It was so bad, and I'm glad that they fired him.
To your stomach.
They were, I know. I think they were limiting Zion's potential, and it's hard for me because I don't know who's mainly at fault. I mean, they blamed it a lot on the medical staff, but at the end of the day, I mean, when they go to fire someone, they always fire the head coach. I mean, they were only letting Zion play for 5 minutes at a time, and there were games where he played really well. And so, I don't know. I think at the end of the day, I'm happy with the decision. I think there's several quality coaching candidates out there that the Pelicans can go out and pursue, and I think they would be a great fit with that young roster. I think Ty Lue's an option. I also think Jason Kidd would be an incredible choice to especially help out Lonzo Ball and progress him as a player, because I think Lonzo's growth is really, really tied to how good this team can be as that scheme of the offense and running the court and stuff like that. So at the end of the day, I'm happy with the decisions by the Pelicans and David Griffin. And yeah, I hope they go and actually get a coach that can help lead this team in the right direction.
I have a suggestion for a new head coach. You mentioned some good ones with Ty Lue and Jason Kidd. I'd like to throw out Mark Jackson.
Yep.
He's the one. He should get a lot of the credit for the Golden State dynasty that formed. I mean, he was the coach before them. I think he was wrongfully fired, and he's kind of not been blackballed. But I mean, he hasn't been considered for really any head coaching jobs. I mean, we heard the front runners for the Cubs, or not the Cubs, the Bulls, but yeah, he hasn't been on those lists. So I think he should get this opportunity with the Pelicans.
Yeah, absolutely. So that wraps up our episode for today. Looking forward to seeing how this first round matchups keep going and how the rest of these playoffs ensue. And hopefully no COVID cases occur within the bubble, as the NBA has allowed family members and significant others to come into the bubble with the players. So hopefully everything continues to run smoothly and we get to see an NBA team get crowned as the champion. So
yes, sir.
That's it for today.
All right.
Peace.
See you guys.